The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We're going to begin the webinar now. First off, I'm Adriana Camarda. I'm the supervisor over domestic violence programs here at DFSS. With me here today, I have Jordi Vasquez, our data fellow.
Hi, everyone.
I would also like to apologize for having this webinar a little bit late after contract awards went out. We had all of the best intentions to have this webinar and coincide with those award notifications, but we still think that there's some value today in bringing you together and going over some contract documents anyway. So with that said, just a few things before we begin. I just want to let everybody know that we're recording this webinar so that those of us who couldn't join us can watch it at a different time. You're all placed on mute unless you're a panelist so that we can reduce the background noise. If you have questions at any time, we encourage you to put them in the chat box feature of GoToWebinar. After each segment of the webinar, we'll stop and take some questions for the presenter who presented on a particular segment. That way you don't have to wait for your question to be answered all the way at the end. Of course, I am available via email or phone for any questions that you may have. I try to provide you the best answer I can or get the answer for you if I don't have it right away. Another super important tip that would have been helpful probably before everybody turned in their contract documents was always to make your read your award notice very carefully. There were instructions in the award letter on what documents were needed and which and where they needed to be sent to. So that's always helpful. As you know or may not know, all of your contract documents, and when I say contract documents, either the signature page or your EDS or your certificate of insurance, as well as your budgets and scopes, should have already been submitted to DFSS Contracts Division or myself, the Programs Division. If you have not already submitted them, we please beg you to submit them by January 31st, which is Monday. The first contracts that go in and get approved by finance and contracts are likely the first to be executed. So you're competing not only with the other DVA projects, but you're also competing with all of the contracts that DFSS issues, which reaches into 500 contracts. So, or the earlier, the better. And also, your award notice may have had links, but the most important link is the one that you see here, where you can find your forms for your scope of services for 2022 and the updated 22 budget. With further ado, I just want to lay out how this presentation is going to go. Hopefully we won't keep you for the entire hour, but lined up to present, we have Alpha Riley from our contracts division. She will be going over parts of the award letter and the contract documents that you needed to submit to our contracts division. Then after that, we will have Angela Smith from the finance division go over the 2022 budget form. And then I will present briefly on the scope of services and changes since last year or for new programs. Then I will briefly talk about make some announcements about new programs and reporting and things that are coming down the line. And then we'll talk about the deadlines and the contact information, and then we'll open it up for a general Q&A. But like I said, after each segment of 1, 2, and 3, we'll pause and take questions in the chat box for anybody that has questions. Before I hand it over to Alpha, I just wanted to go over briefly a little bit of summary of the RFP. As you all know, the RFP was issued in 2021 for 2022 contracts. We, at that time, made a decision to consolidate counseling and advocacy services. So whereas we used to have 6 program models, we now have 5. I want to congratulate everybody who received an award notice on this call. The competition was fierce. The money was, minimal, right? And we had to make the best do that we had with the funding that we had. So I just wanted to say that, and then go over a little bit about what our timeline looks like. Obviously, we've made 2022 awards and you've received this award notice. Typically, when DFSS issues out an RFP for the next year, those are contracts probably for a 2-year cycle. So you'll receive funding this year. You'll receive a renewal likely for next year for 2023. And then in 2023, more than likely, DFSS will issue another RFP for either you to renew your program or for new programs. So be on the lookout, probably in spring of 2023, in order to renew your program that you were just funded for. Okay, and without further ado, I am going to hand it over to Alpha Riley from our contracts division. Alpha, can you hear me?
Yes, good morning, everyone. My name is Alpha Riley, and I oversee the contracts unit here at the Department of Family and Support Services. So by now, that would be in the award package. All right, so under your award notice, what you'll notice is some unique identifiers to your specific contract. So PO number, global agreement number, is unique to your contract. So as you go along and you're filling out your documents and you're looking for where that number is, it is included in this award notice. Also, unique identifiers will be specification number, your vendor number, your program name, your program model. You're paying attention to what your budget start and budget end date is. You also will have a program manager that's assigned to your contract, as well as a contract liaison and a finance accountant. Now, I don't know if some of you may have multiple contracts, but those individuals may be different for each of those contracts. So when you receive an award package, it is per contract, per PO. So just want to make that very clear, because as we talk about other contract documents that you may need, the concept may be that I've submitted that for other documents, although there are some in which can be utilized across different contracts. Again, your PO is unique, and the parties that you'll work with on your contracts could be different in regards to a program manager, liaison, or a finance person. Next slide. All right, so what you would see in your contracting package is a checklist. Now, because you'll be dealing with different parties in the contracting process, there are different documents that need to go to different individuals. So for your contracting checklist, the first items that you'll see is your agreement signature page, which I'll go in great detail a little bit further. And then you have your certificate of insurance, and then an EDS. So for new contracts, we are asking that you submit a new economic disclosure statement per contract, per PO. Okay. Again, that is per PO. If you've already registered in the EDS system, it's not a difficult process to set up and create a new PO. All right, and as we go further down, additional documents, so let me go back. Those are the documents that you're submitting to your contract liaison. Now we'll talk about some of the documents that you'll submit to your program manager. Budget, scope of services, potentially a lease agreement, an affidavit. Your program manager can go in great more detail about which of those documents are needed. We do need a lease, a scope of service, and a budget. But again, those documents should go directly to a program manager versus your contract liaison. Next. All right, so your signature agreement page. All right, so one thing that we've done this year is that we have eliminated the need for this document to be notarized. We still have some documents floating within the signature cycle that may still have that notary at the bottom. And if you see that, then you do not have to fill out the notary. But I will add, if you start filling it out or half fill it out, then you'll have to completely go ahead and fill it out completely. So the idea is if you see that on any of those documents, to just leave it blank. But again, it does not have to be notarized, which is great. So as far as signatures go, we need the appropriate individual signing contracts. And right now, if your title is executive director or president, then we do not need proof of signature authority for you to actually sign the contract. You actually sign it, date it, and put your title. However, if your title falls outside of those titles, then we are going to ask for proof of signature authority. You may ask, what is signature authority? What is proof of signature authority? It's a document that pretty much gives you the authority to bind the agency. Now, that document may look different for different agencies. Some agencies, their board has a document and it lists, who has authority, for what period, what type of authority. Everyone doesn't have the same authority. I've seen signature authority or signature authorization types of documents where someone was able to sign for like up to 100,000. Then it, went from there. But every agency's documents are different, so we wouldn't necessarily say it has to be that document. We will say that it has to be a document from your agency, again, that gives an individual the ability to bind your organization. We do know that that is not everyone. So it's not basically based on your title, because again, that varies from agency to agency. If you have any questions about signature authority, please reach out to your liaison. You can also reach out to myself, and I'd be more than happy to assist you. And the good thing about the signature authority documents is that we do keep those on file. So if you submitted it for one contract, the likelihood that you'll have to submit it for multiple, because we're keeping them on file for usually annually or a few years, just depending on how your agency's documents are written. We're not asking for that document over and over again. Next slide. All right, certificate of insurance. So again, for insurance, we're asking that you submit evidence of insurance with your contract or signed contract. The insurance requirements are actually in your terms and conditions, and how you should actually address that certificate of insurance. Next slide. Economic disclosure statement. So you're dealing with a governmental agency, and so there are certain disclosures that you have to make because you are dealing with a governmental agency. The good thing about the EDS is that it is electronic, okay? So we really are not looking to receive paper copies of the EDS, although I think there's still the option to do it. There's like something on the web that you can download, but we're electronic now. And so the system is set up to where once you create your profile in the system, then it captures or keeps your information. And that way, when you need to create a new economic disclosure statement, it's just a matter, a lot of that information pre-populates, and you just have to put in some specific information as it relates to that specific contract, PO, specification number. And the system will, as long as none of your information has changed, then you're able to go ahead and quickly fill out an EDS. There are quite a few areas that you have to attest to. And so it being electronic makes this process quicker. At the end of your filing for each particular PO, what you will receive is a certificate of filing that you see here. There's a sample of it, and that is what you will submit to your contract liaison. Now, if you are new to the EDS system, or if you have any questions, on the EDS website, there are manuals, there are videos, and if those are not able to help you, they actually have the EDS help desk. And that help desk is Monday through Friday, and that phone number is 312-744-HELP, and they're manned 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. And if all of those avenues fail, then sure, you can reach out to your contract liaison. But those help manuals and videos in this help desk was set up specifically to help you in this area. And I think that is it for contracts. So thank you all for attending. We look forward to working with you in this coming year.
Thank you very much, Alpha. Thank you for reviewing that for everybody. If anybody has questions for Alpha, while we're on the subject of contract documents, you can either put them in the question box or the chat box. We'll monitor both. We don't have any questions so far, but I just wanted to take 30 seconds for people to type and send. Okay, I still don't see any questions or chats, so we're going to go on to the next segment of the presentation, where I want to introduce Angela Smith from the Finance Division. She'll be going over parts of the 2022 budget form. I just want to say, like, the budget form in contract execution is like the first place where sometimes we get a little bit waylaid, and there are corrections that needed to be done to the budget. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Angie.
Good morning, everyone. Congratulations on your 2022 award. We have a slide here. It's just some brief information on doing your budgets, that you can find your budget forms out on the website that you see on the screen. And please use the 2022 budget forms. If you use the 2021 or the 2020, we will be sending them back and asking you to redo the budgets, because the forms are set for you to do certain things in. Also, too, is a few things, and I will discuss it as we go through each form. If you are going to ask us to reimburse you for indirect costs, you have to request a approved indirect letter that is current. Please check it before you do attach it to your budget. Also, if you do not, and you would like to take indirect costs, and you do not have an approved letter, you will have a certification letter on your agency stationery, and you will be asking for the 10% de minimis rate, and you will also indicate if you have applied for an indirect cost rate or you have not. Also, another thing is, if you are on Form 3 in Account 100, if you put that you would like us to reimburse, the City of Chicago to reimburse you for rent, you must have a current lease, and that will be a separate attachment. It will not be attached. Do not attach it to the budget. It will be a separate attachment, but when you do submit it, it will be a separate attachment, and it must be a current lease. And what I mean by current lease, we're reviewing now, budgets now for 2022. If your lease expires like in February, the end of January, or in March, I would advise you to go out and get a more current lease. So please remember that, because if you do not have a current lease, we will ask you to remove the rental of property from your description, or if you put it in there, you have to pay it with ownership. And if you have subcontractors and you are going to put and ask us to reimburse you on Form 3, you will need to submit a sub-agreement to the program division, to Adriana. That would be a separate package as a sub. And so if you're using the 140, send that, because a lot of our grantors are now asking us if we do have a copy of the sub-agreement because you are our subrecipient for the grant or whatever funding that we're using to pay for 2022. So if you use the 140 and you state that you have subcontractors, please not attach to it, just submit a sub-agreement to Adrian. Next.
Angie, before you go on, I just wanted to acknowledge that there was a question for Alpha in the box that we didn't get in time. The question is, do we need to complete and send a delegate agency business information form to your contract liaison?
Only if information has changed. The delegate form that you referenced is to notify us of who your contacts are, your executive director, your finance contact, and your alternate. If any of that information has changed, then we ask that you provide an updated DABI form. We call it DABI form. And depending on what that change is, a letter on your agency's letterhead outlining the change. That is the only time that we will need a updated or a DABI with your contract documents.
Thank you, Alpha. Thanks, Angie. Sorry to interrupt.
It's all right. And for your instructor budget, instruct form 1, budget summary, these are just little tidbits for you to know the different lines that you must complete when you are preparing form number 1. Also, 2, I want to make sure one thing that is needed when you are down in section S, and we'll see it in a few seconds, when the section S is for signing, sign with blue ink, date it, provide your name and the title. Also, 2, when you sign it, do not encrypt. Do not put an encryption on your forms. Please don't do that. Next. Okay, this is a sample of form number 1. Line A is your delegate agency name, and B is your program name. You must also put the preparer of the forms, because if we need to reach out to someone from the finance division, or if program needs to reach out in regards to the preparation of these budget forms, we need to know who that is. We need to have a valid email address. Also, 2, put a telephone number, but more than likely we're going to reach out to you via email. And if we do reach out in regards to the budget, please respond back to us within a 24-hour period. Your supplier number is also the vendor number that you see on your award letter. Those 2 are the one and the same. You will put your federal ID number, and then where the budget allocated year, that is already pre-printed. Anywhere you see it highlighted in yellow, that is where you can fill in information. I will pre-populate when you are preparing forms 2 and 3, and it will add up. That amount is the amount that is mentioned in your award per. And some of you have multiple awards for DV. You will do a separate set of budget forms for each award. Up to K, line K, that's pre-printed. I'm sorry, J is pre-printed. K is in yellow. Your global, you will find that. You will get a new global number that appears on your award letter. The global contract term appears on your award letter. At this time, even though it says entered by department, we will do that at a later time when we're processing. Once after the accountants here review your budget, and your budget is coming in from the program division. So Adriana's team will do the initial review, and once they're fine with it, then they will move it over to the finance team. But on M, we will do that at a later time. So do not put a current release number from 2021 on line M. That will be something new you will get once we upload it into our system, which we call eProg. For you, you will see it later as iSupply. And line N, you will fill that out because that is letting us know the term of this particular budget for the global PO. So majority of them are going to run for 12 months from January 1, 2022 to December 31st of 2022. Line O, leave that blank at this time because we will enter that in, but at later times when you do budget revisions and when this budget fully executes, you will see that number in on the form once it's out on the website. P and Q, CFDA, if you have received federal funding. CSFA, CFA, that's for state funding. But do not put that in there at this time. We will do that here at FSS. Can you move it down, Adriana? Okay, thank you. All right. The account numbers will pre-populate once because you will prepare when you're doing Form 1, you're filling the header out, and that information will go to Form 2 and 3 where it's applicable. And your totals will auto-calculate from Forms 2 through 3 if you are using those forms. Because you're either going to you can use both 2 and 3, 2, because there's a 2, a 2A through C, and a 3. But it all depends how your program is running. But your totals from those forms will auto-calculate back up to form number 1. Now I'm going to drop down to section S. As I mentioned, please sign the budget, sign it in blue ink. You will type in the person's name who signed it and their title. Please do that because sometimes we don't get it, but we do want it. And the controller's office sometimes rejects if they do not see it. So please provide that information. In T, that's where I come in. Once that the accountants review it and it's good to go, then I will sign it and then our team will upload. Next form. For Form 2, these are just a few tidbits that you were to do. Complete line F. Complete the yellow highlighted areas, columns 1 through 11. Complete the highlighted areas, lines 13 through 18, if applicable. Lines 17 to 18, identify your fringe benefit if you are using a benefit not noted already on form number 2. And for if you need additional lines for titles and positions, you can use forms 2A, B, and C. Please do not send us any blank forms. Just pull them away because when you're submitting, you're going to submit as a complete package with forms 1 through 3 if they are applicable. But do not send us any blank forms, and do not skip lines. Use all the lines. If you have more than 6 positions that you're going to present to us in the budget, use all 6 lines on Form 2, then move over if you need additional lines. Use Form 1A. I'm sorry, Form 2A, 2B, and C if you do. Again, I state again, do not submit blank forms with your package. When you're printing Form 2 through 3, select fit sheet on one page. I'm sorry, it should have said page. The E is missing, but that's one page. So that will capture all lines on one page, like Form 2. So you can pick up the total on line 20 sometimes if you don't do that. And check and look and see, because we just don't want one page coming in with line 20 on. So that's why I say this is the example down at the bottom. If you don't put that fit to print on one page, line 20 will go and sit on another page all by itself. And we don't want that. So this is an example of a form. And when I say for F, if it does not populate over or move over to Form 2, make sure that you put your federal employer identification number there. Now, this is an example for your titles. When you're filling it out, column 1 is the title, 2, the number of people in that title, 3 will be the annual or the hourly wage. 4 is the number of pay periods. So if you have 12 months, most people will pay at least twice a month. So 24. Sometimes we see 25, some 26. But usually for these programs that are running 12 months, we will see at least 24 pay periods, unless you are, like for instance, I would take the administrative assistant. If you have them in at one position and you're paying for the first 6 months at one rate, and then there's going to be an increase right underneath it, I would see that administrative assistant. And also what I ask, if you do that underneath the title in column 1, you're going to give a time period. So if it was from January to June, that one position, half of what 32,000 is, put that amount in, then it will be 12 pay periods, the percentage of time. If you want us to reimburse, you will put it in column 8. Then the total cost will automatically auto-calculate once that you put in when you are populating columns 1 through 6. But again, 8 is if you want us to reimburse. Also 2, if you have a title and you have totals in those multiple columns, you must have a job responsibility. And if you have different titles, those job responsibilities are according to the title. There are brief job responsibilities. Do not crowd section column 11. We don't need it to say responsible for, because again, this is the responsibility for that title. So it's given. So as you see the examples that are shown, gives you kind of idea how you have it. Because as you see, we can read you can read all of these job responsibilities. Now, I'm gonna go down to, I want you to look at like an example for the maintenance worker. They're on an hourly. And you see the pay periods and the number of hours per pay period with their rate. This is showing you they will be reimbursed. They have a brief title. Now, if you have anyone that's hourly and you think that the time will vary, please put it in and put it in the uppercase. The reason why I say uppercase is when the controller's office is reviewing later on, when they start reviewing. And if you just set and have a responsibility, and suppose during the course of the year that some of those that are on an hourly, and even if they're not hourly, if they have their time is going to vary, I would strongly suggest you put that wording in and put it after the job responsibility and put it in uppercase, because that draws the attention to your reviewer and controller when it comes time when you do invoice. So as you see on the lines that are not highlighted, that cell is auto-calculated. Then we'll go down to line 13, and 13 will begin the fringe benefits. Again, if you want us to reimburse, you will put it in column 8. Column 8 totals cannot be greater than the total cost column, the total cost that you find in column 10. We do see that. And what will happen, it will put, if you put the grant share total on that line greater than the total cost, it will put a minus in the other share. And that's an indicator that you know that you put the grant share more. So do not have the grant share more than the total cost. Also, the grant share should be proportional to line 12 in column 8. Because the controller's office, they do look at that. And if they find it's not in proportion, and we do too, we will ask you to redo the forms. And when we ask you to redo the forms, if by chance you have to redo the forms, you will put, when you sign again, you will put a new date. Do not go back to the old date, because now this is a new set of forms coming. Now in the fringe benefits, on line 17, 18, if you have another benefit that is not noted above, you will put what the benefit is. Do not leave it blank. If you put numbers, the totals in those on that row, you must identify. And in the yellow section in column 11, you must have your rate, a calculation. Now, if your calculation is a large calculation, you can put in column 11 on that row, on that line, see attachment. We expect to see an attachment. The controller will not allow us to submit and you have totals and there's not a calculation, a formula there, they will reject it. And then you have your totals for your fringe benefits and your salaries. And also too, in your totals, you should not have a bracket around your total. That means something is off, meaning that somewhere probably in the grant share is a little more than what the total cost is. That's an indicator. Next, in this example shows that all the lines from Form 2 were used, and then you had additional title. You were bringing on over to Form 2A. Next, okay, for Form 3, these are just some brief tidbits for you. For like it's telling you to complete columns 3 through 6, if applicable. Do not use account 400 equipment. And that also means if it's for the other share, still do not put anything in account 400, nor using the word equipment. Also for the indirect, and that will go on Form 3. And I had mentioned that in the beginning of the presentation. And again, if you don't have a current indirect rate and you would like to charge it, you have to have a letter. We require you to attach a letter to the budget forms behind Form 3. Yeah, all attachments that you need, they go behind Form 3. Next. Okay. Let's see. There's a brief note to the left about food for clients is not eligible activity, nor is client assistance for any DV program model at this time. Because this example is showing, because this is a dual form and using different presentations, we had to make that note. As you see, this is all, Form 3 is all non-personnel accounts. If they're applicable for your program and you'd like to give us the idea of how you're running your program, this is an example. And to your right in column 6, if you are going to ask for reimbursement, you must list the item in column 6 on that particular account. Again, for account 140, it says consultants, subcontractors, accounting, IT service, security guards. If you do have some contractors, don't forget to submit your sub-agreements to Adriana. And it will be separate agreement. So do not attach it to the budget. For travel account 200 is for staff travel. You can use for mileage, parking, when you are going off site, like attending meetings, going to court, things of that sort. This is not for trying to give it to one of your clients. If you are doing that for the client and you're issuing something to them, that will go down in the 999 account. But the 200 is strictly for staff travel. 300, you can see briefly for these particular programs that are funded through for DV. Also, too, for DV, if you are receiving CDBG funding, do not put the word fees in the budget. We're not going to reimburse for fees. We could say expenses, but not fees. Back to account 300, it states some office supplies, program supplies, computers, computer software. It says on this one again, it said food for meals. This also again was for other programs I did a webinar for. But for your DV, you're not to put the food in. So adhere to what that notation to the left is. Do not put the food in it. Or later come and say, well, I saw it in the presentation. No, not for the DV programs. If you are for gasoline for your city, for the gasoline for your agency vehicles, it can go in 300. Again here, do not use account 400 Even if it's in the other share, do not list it here. For account 0801, indirect, this example is just showing that this agency, this example, the award, grant award share won't be used to reimburse, but it does. When you're telling us about your indirect, give us your rate. We need the rate. Just don't say indirect. Give us a rate. And if it's the approved rate, then it should be matching what is on your letter, unless otherwise you're telling us something different. The 999 account, this one is just saying client assistance. For your programs, you're not going to use client assistance. So if you can't find a particular account above, and if you have reservations about it, reach out to your program divisions to see if they will approve you using the 999. So if you're doing some type of support services or whatever, again, check with Adriana on that. And again, the budget instructions are out on the website with the forms for 2022. And again, this is the website that you can pick up your budget forms and your instructions. And this is just some little tidbits for you, reminders about the budget forms.
Thank you, Angela.
Okay.
We do have some questions for you in the question box. Somebody submitted a 3-part question. Are you ready?
Okay.
Question 1 is, there a limit to indirect costs, or can we include 10% of total direct costs?
You can, no, if you have an approved rate, you can use the rate. But most of the time we would prefer you using most of your dollars for direct services, not indirect services. We will allow it. You can use the 10% de minimis. But
yes, most agencies, if they have an approved rate, we may, we usually allow it. But otherwise, if you don't, or we try to cap it at 10%.
Okay, because it could be capped at 10%. So that's fine. If it's 10% and you're going to use the 10%, you can put it on the de minimis letter and state that you do have a rate, but you're going to use the de minimis, the 10%.
All right. The next question is, for personnel who are allocated 100% to the contract, should PTO be reduced from their personnel calculations when completing the monthly invoices? Are you there, Angie?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
No, we didn't hear anything. I didn't hear anything anyway.
I was saying, can you repeat that?
Oh, sure. For personnel who are allocated 100% to the contract, should PTO be reduced from their personnel calculations when completing the monthly invoices or voucher? If you'd like, we could always address that on, offline.
No, no.
Okay.
Is that it?
That's it. That's the question. There's another question, but that's question number 2.
Mm-hmm. Let's go to the next.
The next question is, if so, Is this also true for personnel who are allocated 100%, but the city contract is not awarding 100% of the personnel costs?
Okay, would they, I want to have a one-on-one with them. They can contact me via email,
Okay.
and then I'll discuss that a little more.
Okay. And then we have another question related to the signature on section S. Can it be an e-signature, or do you want them to actually sign in blue ink and then scan?
Sign it. They have to sign it.
So it has to be an actual signature. It can't be an electronic signature.
Because we're past that e-signature.
So the city is reverting from pandemic rules, and now they're requiring an actual physical signature. So the answer to your question, Hannah, is that the signature has to be scanned.
To be written, a written
Right.
signature.
In blue ink and then scanned and sent to us.
Yes.
Yes. Is there a match requirement? If so, what is the percentage, and is it same for all contracts? So in the domestic violence division RFP from 2021, there was a line in there that said you had to show 20% match. We are mandating that in the contracts this year, that you either demonstrate that in the budget or in the scope of services. So there is a match requirement in the RFP, and you need to show it into your contract documents, and the match requirement is 20%. And then a follow-up question to Hannah's about the e-signature. Should we send a PDF version and the electronic version? Hannah, I would prefer that when you send a budget to me, because I sometimes we ask for changes, or we can do a simple markup. So if you could send the Excel along with the PDF, sometimes that's helpful. Does anybody have any other questions either about their contract or the contract documents or their budget? And then Shanstella, I'll put you in touch with Angie from finance about your question on personnel costs. Okay. So I just want to go over very briefly and keep us under an hour over the changes that you may have seen in the scope of services. Obviously, you all know that I am program manager, as you see my name on all of the award letters. And so all budgets and scope documents, indirect letters, and leases should be sent to me. And then if somebody else in the DB team is reviewing your documents, that I will still be coordinating that. I also failed to mention that Gail Woods from our team is also on the presentation too. So if anybody wants to shout out the chat box to Gail, she's also on the presentation. And then just an overview of some of the changes to the scope of services. You will have noticed it's in a new format that looks a little bit different than the 2021 scope of services. It's in PDF fillable. I know that some of the counseling and advocacy agencies had some problems with their form. They reached out to me, and I was able to email them a Word version. Other agencies were able to overcome whatever PDF challenges were in the form, so I apologize for that. And then the other changes and updates we're going to review very briefly. It still has the scope of services, 7 sections that all need to be completed, including 2 narrative sections. So it doesn't look very different than that. The agency, well, one major change that sort of helped in completing the scope is that we reiterated the instructions at the top of the form, and that seemed to help, especially on what attachments needed to go with. The second thing is multiple program site locations was streamlined to match the homeless division. And so every site had a number associated with it, and you could provide me the information by line for that site. And then just some important reminders. This is the website where you can find all contract documents that you need and that we discussed today. When you're completing the documents, make sure all of the entry boxes that are either highlighted or need to be filled are filled, and that the signature and dates are included. I do take e-signatures on the scope, so that hasn't been a problem. And then you need to email them all to me as your program manager, all of the pages of the scope of services. Then briefly, I just want to talk about there are an agency that has a new program and a new agency that is participating today, and just wanted to review. For those programs and implementation dates, we can have a one-on-one session to talk about startup and implementation and contract execution. So I just wanted to be able to see what the budget document looked like and what the scope looked like, but also include you on the session. One other thing about implementation dates for new project, new program sites or new program contracts, your implementation date will still be January 1st so that you can budget and incur any expenses to set up your program to your DFSS contract. So your implementation date will be January 1st, but obviously if you don't have clients that day immediately, it's not a problem. We can discuss that on your session. And then just a summary announcement for your 2021 and your 2022 reporting. Your quarterly template for your 2021 fourth quarter was due January 14th. If you haven't submitted that to me or Jordy, please do so. Jordy and I have been working this year to review InfoNet data. Well, he's been working a little bit harder than I have to admit, to review the data in InfoNet and how it matches your quarterly template. And we're trying to streamline those issues in 2022 so that we can grab and collect data from InfoNet and reduce your quarterly template. We've been reviewing also project data to make sure that matches. And then we've also streamlined in not only your scope and upcoming templates with performance measures so that they're a lot clearer in the template and to track. So you should be seeing that when you receive your quarterly templates. I'm sorry, when you receive the new quarterly templates for 2022. So just some deadlines to go over. We would like everything to be submitted January 31st, which is not a Tuesday, it's actually a Monday. I apologize for that. Also, all of your staff certifications and job descriptions that you promised us in the RFP, if they were not submitted at the RFP time, or they have been updated or changed since the RFP time, send us in your changes or updates. You don't need, if you already submitted it with RFP, you do not need that, and you already have access to those documents. And then just a small note about surveys, client surveys. Tina Jackson from our DB team is planning to retire also on Monday, so she will no longer be collecting paper scans or versions of your surveys. Those also should be directed to my attention. And then reporting deadlines for the 22 quarterly templates will be in the 22 quarterly template. They'll be provided for you for all 4 quarters. It's no surprise that the first quarter data will be 15 days after the quarter ends. So your first report will be due April 15th. Here is DV contact information for Gail and I. And like I said, Tina Jackson will be leaving the city as of January 31st, so she won't be receiving any more emails after February or in February. Also, what I didn't say at the beginning is that I will be providing everybody a copy of this presentation and email to all the participants as well. And then having said that we were going to have new streamlined 2022 quarterly templates, I want to announce that Jordy and I will also be having a separate webinar sometime in February. We will get that date out to you as soon as we can. And I just wanted to do another shout out for the $25 million investment in gender-based violence that the mayor put into the 2022 budget. If there are any RFPs from the DV division, you'll be seeing RFPs for those gender-based violence services. The bucket areas are legal services, rapid rehousing, youth services, prevention, education, as well as a financial assistance program for survivors that I'm very excited about. So be on the lookout for those. The earliest those will come out is probably the end of the first quarter, second quarter for program implementation and later. And at this time, I just want to make sure that there are no other questions in the question box. I don't see any. Okay, I see a question about the online surveys. As you've probably deduced, I am a one-woman show here for a little bit. So on all of the surveys, we have access to those, and we can pull down your data if you request it for 2021. You should have had in your quarterly report an update for Q3. You should have seen how many electronic surveys were collected in the Q3 report, and we plan on doing the same thing for Q4. We just collected all of the Q4 templates, so we haven't been able to send those back with all of your final electronic survey data in there. So just so you know, you can either request it for it separately, but we will be sending out your fourth quarter template back to you with the electronic survey data in. Are there any other questions before we dismiss? Monica, thank you for bringing that up. We probably will cover the paper surveys in the webinar coming up in February. We need to address not only will the paper surveys be updated for 2022, but we also need to address the fact that we consolidated counseling and advocacy. So we want to put it out there to you, the providers, whether we should consolidate that survey or if you want to keep them separate. So we will be using in the first quarter the same surveys. The links still work. Electronic surveys are still being collected, and you can still use the paper survey. Based on the feedback that we received in the secondary webinar that we're going to host, we'll make changes to the surveys. Are there any other questions? If you have a burning question after this presentation and after we dismiss, of course, you can reach out to me. I try to answer all emails as quickly as I can. If you can't get a hold of me, you can also reach out to Gail in this presentation as well. And then she texts me that there's an email there. So we try to answer all of the questions as quickly as we can. All right. Without any further questions in the chat box, I want to thank everybody for participating. I'm sorry we went over about 4 minutes, but like I said, this presentation has been recorded, and we will also send out the slides as well as written responses to some of the questions that we received. Thank you.